I think it's the concentration of expertise in C++ specifically. I mean, it's all in the name. It's been really great to just like hang out with these experts and just like pick their brains and, absorb their knowledge.
Well, thanks everybody for coming to our Visual Studio talk. What's new in Visual Studio for C++ developers in 2025? My name is David Lee, and I work on game development on the Visual Studio product team.
And my name is Augustin Popa, and I'm also a product manager on the Microsoft C++ team working on Visual Studio and VC Package.
So it's great to be back at CppCon. If you have attended one of our Visual Studio talks in the past, we always like to start off by reminding everyone our product team's mission, which is to empower every C++ developer and their teams to achieve more. And today what we'll show you, we got a lot of action-packed demos, and before that, courtesy reminder to please give us a chance to hear your opinion by filling out our survey. Our survey is very important to us. It really decides how the product team moves with the product direction in the upcoming year. So every year at CppCon, we definitely take into account all of the responses to our feedback. This year, we're giving out some Lego prizes as raffle prizes. On Thursday, there is a car. So we're actually drawing the raffle every single day at 4:30. Come by our booth. You don't have to be there, but it'll be nice if you're attending to win it in person. Here are some of the rest of the talk. Enjoy the presentation. We're going to start with some major announcements. Then move on to the latest improvements for your editing cycle. So editing, navigation within the editor. Then we'll talk about improvements for managing your libraries and building, before moving on to debugging and diagnosing issues. And last, we'll finish off with the latest updates for source control in Visual Studio. So let's get started with our major announcements, and that is Visual Studio 2026 Insiders Edition is now available. If you haven't tried it out, I highly encourage you to give it a shot. It is available today, and you can definitely install both VS 2022 and 26 side by side. As I mentioned before, our feedback is very valuable, whether it's through surveys, through conversations in the halls, at our booth, and definitely developer community tickets. Over the past 12 months, the C++ team has worked on almost 400 issues and have completed almost 30 feature requests. As a whole, across Visual Studio, so not C++ specific, we have fixed almost 4,500 issues and almost 300 feature requests. Now, this can encompass everything from other languages, but also the core Visual Studio features in the editor, the debugger, search, etc. So once again, doing our survey is a chance for you to give us your feedback. Now, 2026 has a new look and feel. We have a fresh new UI with a lot of different themes. And you'll see some of this later today. The settings page has been completely revamped. You'll be able to access all your settings, search through a completely new interface. All your extensions will work. So if you upgrade, your VS 2022 extensions will work just as it would in 2026. And lastly, this is our deepest integration with Copilot yet, with Copilot helping you every step of your coding process. We'll get to this in just a minute when Augustin will come on stage to show you the latest integrations. All right.
All right, so we're going to start off with a demo showcasing Visual Studio 2026. So this is what Visual Studio 2026 looks like. This is in the Insiders channel, which is basically the new term we use for a preview build of Visual Studio, but you can try it out today and see how well it works for your projects. This is the dark theme that I have opened right now, but if I go to Tools and Theme here, you can see we actually have 11 different choices for themes. For this demo, I will actually use the light theme because I think it looks a little bit better, like on the background here. But there are lots of different options for you to choose from. And you can see as well that I have already opened a code base. This is a CMake project, and it's called Bullet. It's a physics SDK. It handles things like collisions and moving objects around. And this is an example application with it where it's basically just making a bunch of cubes fall down. And I'm going to be making a few changes to this particular program as part of this demo. And to show you what we will be changing here, I have forked this repo, and I have a few GitHub issues that I added, and these are the changes I basically want to make. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring those objects closer together when they fall down, rather than just having them fall really far apart from each other. The second thing I want to do is change the objects from cubes to spheres. Then I also want to make sure I have documented my code properly with comments. And lastly, I want to use the console window that also pops up when you run the program, because right now it's not really doing anything, but I want to print the initial positions of those objects, which might be useful in the future if I'm debugging some issue in the future. And I'm going to try to do that using some C++23 features. All right, so if we switch back to this. So first things first, I have CMake targets view opened here. The target I'm working with is this app basic example GUI. So let's see if I can find the code that corresponds to it. And you can see here, this is the universal search experience in Visual Studio. You might notice the UI looks a bit different. I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, I just want to show you that, so it works the same as before. You can search for files or types or other code symbols. So I can filter it down. And it looks like there's this basic example.cpp file here. And what I want to do is figure out where can I actually, what changes can I make in this file to make those falling objects appear closer together. So to do that, I'm going to switch to the GitHub Copilot chat window here. And particularly, I'm using ask mode right now. You have a variety of models that you can choose, different LLMs that you can choose to use. We keep this updated regularly. For this, I want to use GPT 4.1, but you can see there are lots of different options available. And I'm just going to basically ask it to investigate if there is a way to basically make the change to bring those objects closer together. So do you see anything in this file that might help me fix the spacing between the falling cubes when I run? And I'm just going to go ahead and have that kick off Copilot and just start looking into this. And while it's doing that, I'll talk a little bit about the new UI for the unified search experience. So you might be used to the search experience looking like this. Okay, you have this pop-up in the middle of the screen. There's now a button that allows you to dock it wherever you'd like. So right now I have it docked on the left side. I like it when it appears there, but I can drag and drop that wherever I'd like it because it basically becomes a tool window in Visual Studio. So that's pretty nice. We still have all the different filters for what you want to do. You can also type in like F:, or T:, depending on what you're looking for. You can go to a line number by typing just : and then the line number. There's also feature search if you want to look up a Visual Studio feature. So that's all been there before as well. So right now I just navigated down in the file a little bit, and it looks like Copilot also finished. And it looks like it determined that there is this triple for loop, which I just navigated to. And there are some multipliers here that determine the spacing between those falling cubes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to update that. I'm going to make those smaller, and that should bring the cubes closer together. So I'm going to make that change, and then we're going to try running this again, and then see if this is working correctly. Okay, so the cubes came closer together. They basically form a big cube. It looks really nice. Looks like that was successful. Great. Okay, so we can go ahead to the next change then. Now I'm going to switch Copilot to agent mode. So, and as part of agent mode, I'm going to try to get it to change the falling objects. So make the falling objects spheres rather than blocks. And I'm going to update the model. Let's say Claude Sonnet 3.7. Okay. And the difference here, so I'm in agent mode. So what is agent mode? So the ask mode basically is like a questions and answers. You can, it's just like any AI chat interface you might have used before, where you can ask it questions and maybe learn a bit about the code base you're looking at. But with agent mode, it can actually go and implement changes for you throughout your code base. It has a lot of context to figure out step by step what it needs to do to address the prompt that you gave it. So in this case, it's going to try to figure out, how do I change these objects? So instead of showing a bunch of cubes, it's going to show some spheres falling down instead. And it's running in the background in doing that right now. And you can see it's actually going, it's analyzing this file right now. And you can see that it's already making changes to it. It actually lists the files that are having changes applied to them. So you can keep an eye on exactly which file was modified. And you also have a keep and undo option. So if you don't like what it's doing, you can always undo it. And you can do that file by file, depending on how you feel about the changes that it's making. And it's actually going ahead and making changes. And you can see it's highlighting here. Okay, like I'm changing this shape to a sphere shape. And it's basically going and figuring out exactly which lines need to be updated here. And it determined that there is a type of object called a sphere shape that it can use instead. There already exists a way to call this within this code base. So it basically analyzed the code base and figured out just from that simple prompt I gave it, okay, there is a way to do this, and I can just swap this out so it's not going to use the cubes, it's going to use the spheres instead. And I'm just going to go ahead. It looks like it ran a build successfully here. I'm just going to pause it here and just try running it for myself and see what it looks like. And there we go. So it went in and made the changes, and now the cubes became spheres. Okay. So now I'm going to keep these changes because it looks like it did what I wanted it to do. So I clicked keep. All right, so let's try another prompt for agent mode. Add comments to this file based on project conventions. So what it's going to do now, it's going to add documentation comments throughout this file. And you might be wondering, well, what if it generates a bunch of comments and I don't really like the comments, and then I have to undo it and I've just wasted a bunch of time because it does the comments in a way that I don't really like. So there is a solution to that. And if I go back to the search experience, there is a file in this repo called Copilot instructions.md. It's in the .github folder. Okay, so what I've done basically is I've defined the conventions I want this project to follow in this file. And Copilot will use this file as context for any prompts that I give it to try to make sure that the responses are tailored to my particular repo and my particular needs. So I have general instructions about like what C++ standard I want to use, the API and style, performance and safety. And there's also a section for documentation comments. So you can basically just write in what instructions you have for it. I also want to point out there's like you might notice these lines are indented. This is another new feature. So there's an indent on word wrap feature available now in tools options. So that's why they look indented like that here. And you can see the little arrow indicating it's word wrap. And it's very easy to fill in this file. So I can say something like do not use and okay. It's being a little slow here, but basically, as you start typing things in the file, it can use the auto completion experience. So there you go. So do not use to do comments, instead create an issue. So you can very easily just start writing new lines to this file. And the way I basically added the previous lines is I wrote a couple of words and Copilot figured out, oh, this is probably the rest of the sentence that you want to have here. So it's pretty easy to get started with using a file like this. Okay, so let's go back to here. It looks like it added a bunch of different comments throughout this code base. And the way it structured the comments, you might notice is this Doxygen style comments, and we've commented like the top of every function. This is based on the context I gave it in the Copilot instructions file. So it's doing it in that particular way. So we're going to go ahead and just try running it again just to make sure. So this should have only messed around with comments, so it shouldn't have broken the build in any way, but I just want to check. So yeah, it looks like it's still working correctly, and now I have comments in this file. Okay, so that looks good. All right, so next, I want to use that console window and display something there. So what I'm going to do, just to get us started, so I have some code snippets here. I'm just going to start by pasting this in. Basically, I want to add a function that is able to print the state of the objects at the start before they fall. Well, there's a client format issue there. I'll just skip that. Okay, so I added this print world state function, and I also have a bunch of pound includes. I'll just move these to the top. All right. Yep, we'll just move them over here. Okay. And I still have a little bit to fill in here. Oh, and I need to call the function as well. So it's called print world state. So if I go back to that triple for loop that we had here, I can call print world state. And okay, we'll skip the client format error there for a second. And this is, all right, so it auto-completed that to display the initial world state. Okay, so then I also want to make sure I set the C++ standard to C++ 23 because I'm going to be using some new features here. So we're going to go to the CMake lists, and we want to make sure we add set CMake CXX standard, and we're going to do 23. And then it auto-completed, or it's suggesting the next auto-completion to set the standard required to on. Okay, and then when I save this, this is going to regenerate the CMake cache. And then I just have one more change to make here, which is going back to the print world state function itself. I left a to-do. I do have to fill in something here. Okay, so what we're going to do, so I want to use std print line, and I want to use formatting ranges. So C++ 23 features to print out this output. So I'm just going to start by just adding a vector, and you can see that it auto-completes it. And I should probably disable client format in this file, but we'll just ignore that again. So std vector, I just auto-completed the whole line. And then you can see it's already saying, oh, maybe you want to do std cout and std format, but that's still not modern enough for me. Okay, so I'm going to do std print line, and again, just auto-complete that, and that's client format error again. All right, so then this is going to create this, it's going to auto-complete this. And then, so this is going to generate the coordinates for each object. It's going to add square brackets around that, but maybe I don't want the square brackets. I just want a cleaner looking like output in the console window. So I'm just going to add this :n here. And then we will try running that and seeing how it looks. There we go. So the program's still working correctly. Now I'm printing the positions of the objects in the console window. So I'm using the console window for something now. Perfect. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with those changes. So let's figure out how to commit them into my source control and get them in. So I'm going to switch to the Git changes window here. It shows that I've updated 2 files. I've updated the CMake list file, and I've updated the CPP file. I'm going to stage those changes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click this button, which is Review Changes with Copilot. So it basically has Copilot do a code review at the commit line. Now it's AI, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but the point is this is something you can run in the background while you're doing other stuff. So for example, I'll also start generating an automatic commit message, and it's doing that as well in the background. And so basically I can kind of multitask here and I can go and look at different things. And it looks like it generated the commit message here. And you might notice the commit message. So this is an AI generated commit message that looks at the specific changes I've made, as basically what I've just demoed, every single change. And you can see it follows a specific template. It has this like title at the top. It has a few bullets. The grammar is a certain way. And there is a reason for that. And that is because I've configured this in Tools Options to look like that, to use that template. So if I go to Tools Options, this is the new Tools Options UI in Visual Studio 2026. It's now integrated in the middle there. You can drag and drop it wherever you'd like. I think it looks best in the center. So it looks a lot more like the VS Code one, very, very clean. And it has a nice search experience as well. So I can search for a commit message. And you can see here, there is a commit message custom instructions. And this is where I put the template for what I want the auto-generated commit messages to look like. So just like the other custom instructions file, that was the broad one for the repo, that Copilot Chat was using, this one is for auto-generated commit messages. So I can make sure every time I do a commit, the commit messages follow the same template and they summarize my change as well. And I don't have to worry about remembering like what is the syntax I'm supposed to use or having to spend time manually typing all that. So that's pretty cool. All right, it also looks like the Copilot code review finished. It generated a few comments. We'll just quickly look at this. It's like it's saying, oh, are you sure you want to use print? Because maybe not all compilers support this yet. So yeah, maybe that might be a good suggestion. It's also calling out, hey, look, this function you added print world state, you never documented it at the top the way you're supposed to according to the Copilot instructions file that says you have to have comments at the top. So it realized, oh, you missed this thing, or maybe you should consider doing this a different way. So these comments can be really useful for catching things before you commit. And the worst case scenario is maybe you'll get a comment and you think, you know what, I don't need to do anything here. But it's something that can just run in the background. So we really don't waste much time by having that run. And it's just like another layer of checking to make sure you're not doing anything too crazy. I'm not going to take action on these right now because we do have a lot more content to cover, but we can accept these changes. We can commit the changes with that commit message, and then I can just click push, and this will push. Okay, I probably haven't configured the remote repository properly here, but basically that would just push the changes to my remote repository, and that's it. That's basically all my changes done, and everything is in. All right, so that's it for this demo. All right, how do I resume slideshow? Okay, so just quickly, a quick overview of, so some of this I've already talked about. So you saw I had a CMake project opened in Visual Studio. So we do have native support for CMake projects in Visual Studio for quite a while now. You don't need to generate like MS build solution and project files. You can just use the native support there. And I showed you the CMake targets view, which nicely arranges the files by target. And there are some other features as well, like there's CMake presets support to help you configure your environment and tailor it to your needs. We have a version 9 support right now for CMake presets. There's also a CMake debugging experience if you want to debug your actual CMake files, which is pretty cool. That's not something I had time to show in the demo, but that's worth calling out. And some of the newer changes in the past year, so like there's the V9 support for CMake presets, but there's also IntelliSense for CMake modules, like in quick info, auto completion, and hover details. And we also added several more Visual Studio features now support CMake projects, including CPU usage, events viewer, and file I/O tools. And this is in the newest version of Visual Studio in 2026. And lastly, I also want to call out, if you're targeting, if you want to target multiple platforms, we do have a remote Linux targeting support in Visual Studio. You can work from your local, like Windows Visual Studio instance, and you can connect to a remote machine or to Windows subsystem for Linux, and you can build and debug on that Linux system. And you're just basically working locally as if you were doing Windows development, and you can seamlessly switch between your Windows and Linux targets. But all the Linux work happens on the remote system. The files get synced between the two environments. Your builds happen remotely, your debugging runs remotely. So it's a pretty cool experience if you're doing cross-platform development.
All right, so I think all of us have just seen agent mode in action in Visual Studio. The thought behind agent mode is really helping you do your entire edit, debug cycle, step of the way, right? And some things that agent mode can offer is autonomous multi-step execution, context-aware automation. So for example, if you have a debug build, if you have a release build, agent mode will understand that context and apply it in the actions and the replies. And I just mentioned debug and release. Well, I'll hold on to that and we'll show you some improvements in that area very shortly. And lastly, agent mode can really help you with testing and debugging automation. This is a great time to no more excuses for not writing comments, unit tests. Copilot is there to help you. Some other GitHub Copilot improvements in Visual Studio. There's now the free tier, so you can try it out. In addition to agent mode, we have added MCP support. You have seen some of the C++ completion enhancements in action, as well as the model picker. Very recently, we have added bring your own model. So if out of those many models that are available to you and you're still not satisfied, you can now bring your own model. So Augustin showed you some new non-Copilot features. For example, the word wrap indentation, as well as enhancements to the search window. We have also revamped the entire change signature experience. So you can hover over your symbol, press Control period, and the change signature dialog will show up. Now this is a brand new interface that allows you to drag and drop your signatures, so you don't have to manually change your signatures. And lastly, very popular request. You can now save your file with a specific encoding. It's now available. Please try it out. One of the top voted tickets on developer community. So before I get into managing libraries and building your project, hope you have taken away some of the productivity features, because everything the team has worked on is really to improve your productivity with Copilot and with your editing, so you can focus on what matters most, which is coding. All right.
All right, so we're in the section talking about building your code. First, I want to remind everyone that we do have Clang support in Visual Studio. You can install the Clang tools for Windows from the Visual Studio installer. If you are a Clang user and you want to use, say, the same compiler to target multiple platforms, and it is supported throughout our project systems, if that's something you'd like to try out. You can see there's like a aka.ms links there in the corner. So every time you see one of those yellow boxes, you can always navigate to that link. We usually have links to blog post or documentation if you want to learn more about these topics. So just a reminder that we do have Clang support in Visual Studio. But I really want to talk to you about MSVC build tools, which is our very own compiler and build tools that we have for Windows development. If you want optimized build performance and to build secure applications and libraries, we've been putting a lot of effort into improving our SDL and our compiler and our runtime performance, just to make sure that you get the best possible experience building C++ code on Windows. And new in Visual Studio 2026, we have MSVC build tools version 14.50. And if you're using MS Build, you'll want to set the platform toolset to V145 to use that. Now, I know many of you may have questions about where we are in terms of C++ conformance. So we've been adding more C++ 23 features. We're really trying to close the gap there and catch up and become C++ 23 complete. That is our top focus right now. There's a list there of the different features we've been adding. You can see formatting ranges there. That's something I was showing in the demo. But we're continuing to work to try to complete the remaining backlog of C++23 features so we can say we're C++23 complete. But right now, if you want to try them, you can use the std C++23 preview switch. And at some point, that preview will go away and it'll just be std C++23 once we are completely done with it. But there's also a std C++ latest switch for features even beyond C++23. If you do want to learn more about the recent improvements in the compiler and STL, so we came out with a blog post last week on compiler updates and the new 14.50 update. At that first aka.ms link, you can find it on the Microsoft C++ team blog. And if you want to see any updates in the STL, the Microsoft STL is open source, and we're very transparent about all the progress there. There's a nice change log that shows all of the features that are being added in each release. And there's an overall view as well of seeing overall for C++23, for example, what's in and what still needs to be done. So I recommend checking that out if you want to learn more about it. And we did a little bit of progress as well to C++26, support including standard library hardening. We still have more work to do here, of course, so we are focusing on getting C++23 conformance, but we will continue rolling out updates here as quickly as possible.
All right, so at the booth, I've gotten some questions of like, what are some selling points to upgrade my compiler to the latest? And one of the top reasons is performance. So I'm a game developer, product manager, and I work with a lot of game developers. And one thing that is on both game developers and those of you who are working on large projects is runtime performance. And over the past year, the team has been working really, really hard on improving runtime performance in MSVC. We have partnered up with Epic Games to learn some of the ways our compiler can be made faster, thanks to their comments. And for example, we are benchmarking MSVC against Unreal Engine City Sample with the Xbox Series configuration. As you can see here on render thread, from 1714, we already have a very great improvements. And in the next upcoming weeks and months, you'll continue to see even more improvements to our compiler as we get close to the stable version of 18.0. Similarly, we have also been making a lot of improvements in, for example, the MSVC game thread for runtime performance. And all of this is possible thanks to better AVX vectorization, and we have improved code gen for struct fields and branches. Now, I know build performance and runtime performance is on top of everyone's minds. So, if you're not on the latest, please, try and convince your team to upgrade to the latest compiler. And if all those performance improvements are not enough, we do have C++ Build Insights. Build Insights is a very, very powerful tool that leverages MSVC trace capture technology to generate an ETL file. With Build Insights, it will run your build, get an ETL file, and you'll be able to see many different views. For example, headers view, right? Whether your headers could be included in PCH, or if there are a lot of expensive headers, right? That could be a great reason to use a PCH. Or you can see information about function generation bottlenecks or long template instantiation times. So just more information at your fingertips to improve your build performance. We have added a lot of new quality of life features thanks to feedback. You can now run Build Insights on selected files. There's better filtering. And we have seen great success with partners. There is a great case study if you want to get an understanding of how to apply the insights you've gotten from Build Insights to make changes to your code. You can visit aka.ms/buildinsightsmw2 to see how Activision used Build Insights to decrease Modern Warfare Warzone's build time by 50%. A lot of good learnings. Highly recommend to check out the case study. All right, code safety and security.
All right. So just want to talk about a couple of different tools we provide to help you with code safety and security. We'll start with the Microsoft C and C++ code analysis experience. So this is something you can get as part of Visual Studio that runs in the background, just like when you get IntelliSense warnings and errors. This basically runs static analysis in the background, and it can be really useful for finding additional issues like buffer overruns, uninitialized memory, null pointer dereferences in memory, and resource leaks. It also comes with a number of C++ core checks to make sure that your code is compliant with the C++ core guidelines, because you don't want to just stop at making sure your code can successfully compile. You want to make sure that your code uses the most modern features and that it's safe. And it's written about, in terms of how the structure of the code, it's using modern features as part of the code base. So there's some improvements in the past year to this experience. They include new diagnostics for concurrency and locking. We also have enhanced overflow detection for allocations, as well as some improved warning suppressions. And if you want to learn more, there's the aka.ms link there. Now, I talked about static analysis, but there's also dynamic or runtime analysis. So if you're familiar with the address sanitizer tool as part of LLVM, we also have a version of it for the MSVC build tools. So this is a tool that that is part of your program when you run it. If you add the fsanitize equals address compiler flag, it'll help you identify hard to find bugs with 0 false positives. And it identifies an additional cohort of issues that are not caught by traditional static analysis tools. So we recommend running both the code analysis experience as well as address sanitizer to validate your code changes, or even just run it through your entire repo and see if there's anything historical that maybe you never got caught in the past, to help you improve correctness and memory safety and secure your code, and just in general stress test your programs. And I do also want to announce here that we are working on ARM64 support. It will be coming in a future insiders release of Visual Studio 2026. So this is the very first basically preview of Visual Studio 2026 that's available now, but there are a few more updates coming shortly. So you will start seeing ARM64 support light up, which will allow you to build with fsanitize equals address for ARM64 projects. And lastly, I want to call out the Microsoft Guidelines Support Library, which provides types and functions to write safer, more maintainable code, which was also updated this year to version 4.2 with new features and fixes. And a good way to get started with it is to install it with VC Package. And speaking of VC Package, that's our C++ package manager. It's available, either you can install it standalone or you can install it as part of Visual Studio itself. And it's a great tool to use to manage your C++ dependencies. VC Package at this point has over 2,600 unique libraries available as part of its curated registry, which are built and tested and validated for 15 different common build configurations to make sure that they work with each other and there aren't any ABI issues or version conflicts between them. You can also bring your own libraries to VC Package if you'd like. And we have a number of advanced features to help you customize your experience, whether you're a student or a professional developer, depending on your needs. You can control what versions you want of your libraries. You can control how those libraries are built, because VC Package is designed from a build from source approach. So you build your libraries from source exactly the way you want them so that they work with the consuming project and with each other. And you only need to really do that once or anytime you're changing your build configuration for the first time, because we have binary caching to cache those binaries so you can just reuse them in the future. And VC Package will detect, oh, can I just get the binary or do I need to do a new build? So that can save you a lot of time there. And VC Package also works in an offline or air-gapped environment with the asset caching feature, which I also recommend checking out if that's a requirement for you. And in terms of what's new in the past year, there are some performance improvements, and thanks to some great community contributions, as VC Package is an open source project. We have improved package installation speeds and improved binary caching restore performance. And GitHub Dependabot also recently added support for VC package. So if you're a GitHub user, you can upgrade your libraries basically automatically. What Dependabot does is it submits a PR to your repo, and it will say, okay, here's the list of updated libraries, and it uses VC package's versioning baselines feature. So basically, you can update the baseline in your VC package manifest file, and that will update all of your dependencies at once to new versions. And those new versions, because they're all on the same baseline, they should just work with each other without you having to go and figure out what's the individual version of each library that I need to set to make sure I have a compatibility between them. So I definitely recommend checking out that experience and giving us feedback. All right.
All right, so we have talked about improvements when you're editing code and when you're building your code. But what about when it comes to debugging? So as a game developer product manager, I have chatted with a lot of AAA game developers and learned that actually a lot of the same issues that game developers face are applicable through common everyday C++ applications. Now, this is especially true if you have a very large project. So before I get into my demo, I want to ask folks in the room, raise your hand if you have a debug and release configuration. Okay, that's quite a lot of you. And raise your hand if you tried debugging in release recently. Okay, so what are some of the issues that are common when you're debugging your release build, right? Your build is so optimized, right? Optimized for speed. Game developers tell me that in debug configuration, you get a lot more debugging support, but the frame rates might be atrocious. Now, if you try to do the same thing in release, you might not get all your locals, right? Variable is optimized away. Very common red X, probably not a great thing to see, but unfortunately is there. But also when you try to step through your code, your pointer just jump everywhere. You don't know where it's going. It's unreliable. So now what if I told you you can have both? What if you can have full debuggability with your release build? So that's what I'm going to show you in this demo, along with some other Copilot integrations through the debug and diagnose cycle. So give me a minute while I jump over to Visual Studio. I'm going to actually disable that and continue. So as you can see here, we have this Lara sample game running, 60 FPS, right? This is release. This is not a debug build. Let me go back to Visual Studio and reactivate my breakpoints. Now, we're in something called the new C++ Dynamic Debugging mode. What we can do here is, first thing I want to show you, if you go to the call stack, you can see that there's a new deoptimized tag for this frame. What this means is the current frame you're looking at is deoptimized. So how this works is we build your binary twice, once in release, and once optimized and once unoptimized. And as soon as you put a breakpoint on there, you'll get to the deoptimized. So what can we do, right? We can step in. So, right, now we're in the force inline function. This is just not possible if you're trying to debug your release build. Okay, what else can we do? We can step into the next function, which is this calculate transform bounds. Okay, so we have some variable declarations. And if we look at our locals window, we can see all of our variables. What else can we do? We can tell it to run to cursor, right? Because now the instruction pointer actually knows where to go, right? We can have it run to cursor, or you can right-click on the line, and set next statement. Once again, these are not new debugging features, right? These are debugging features that were available for a very long time in debug configurations. But now you can do it when you're debugging your release builds. So let me step out here and show you one more thing. So we only de-optimize frames you care about. If I go to this frame, for example, you'll see scene. The typical variable is optimized away message. So how can you get around that? You can select your frames with either Control or Shift to select more than one, right-click, and de-optimize on next entry. So once I click that and just let it break again, you'll see that all the frames that we selected, and especially the previous Chaos Engine interface, is de-optimized. And here, the scene variable is available to you. So we store all the breakpoints in a de-optimized breakpoint group. What you can do is you just select all of them and delete them. If I disable this breakpoint and press continue, you'll see, hey, my game is back to full frames. So this is how you can get full debuggability with dynamic debugging. Okay. Now, I'm going to set the breakpoint again. One more thing that I want to show you. So previously, we're in some rendering code, right? This could be a common first place for you to see mesh glitches or something, right? And something that we have added is additional integrations and parallel stacks. So if we take a step back from the rendering code and see our code as a whole through the parallel stacks view, this is a view, if you're not familiar, that shows you what all your threads are doing. Unreal Engine is incredibly optimized and has lots of threads going on. And one of the first things you might notice is we have added new thread summaries. So you don't have to guess what your threads are doing. Copilot will tell you. And there's always a Generate Insights button if you want to find out more of your current application state. Okay, in the interest of time, we'll actually go to our next part of the demo by activating this breakpoint. And hopefully, if I play around the game a little bit more, the breakpoint will activate. So now we were in some rendering code. We saw all the different threads. Here, I want to show you one more addition that we have added to the debugger. So how many of you are familiar with conditional and dependent breakpoints? Okay, great. So one of the things that you can actually do is, if I set a breakpoint here, and we go to conditions, Copilot will help you figure out some conditions, right? So this is a great way to improve your productivity. Perhaps you already have something in mind, which probably not the case, right? In this example, I don't have something in mind, but current heat is less than max range. I don't think any of these are helpful. But what if I know that some action happens when the current heat is at a specific integer value, right? What if it's 4? So this is a great way for you to see that how Copilot can help you improve your productivity throughout your loop. Okay, one more thing before we move on. So everything that I have talked about up until this point is not game development specific. Even though I used Unreal Engine as an example, dynamic debugging, parallel stacks, and all of the Copilot features are very applicable for all C++. But for Unreal Engine specifically, we had recently worked with Epic Games to add blueprint debugging to our debugger. So just like dynamic debugging, you can see a new tag in your call stack window. Now, what this does is when you're stopped, you can double click on the blueprint. So we have this, which reminds you you need our Visual Studio integration tool. I'll talk a little bit more after the demo, but once you click on the blueprint frame, you can now go to your blueprint. You can see all your blueprint variables. For example, your node pins, see what the values of all the blueprint variables are. And for example, if it's something that you're not familiar with, flow stack, what could that possibly mean? Click on the little GitHub icon next to that variable. And then GitHub Copilot will take in the context of your current application status, get the variable information, and give you a very detailed summary of A, what your variable is, but more importantly, what your variable's values mean, could potentially mean when your program is stopped. Okay, so the debugger agent is looking through various files. It thinks some files are available, but not. That's okay. And you can see here, right? We have tasks, we have a plan. Read a certain amount of C++ files for Copilot to understand. And then it'll give you the value of flow stack and what it means. All right, let's get back to the presentation. Okay. So following our Unreal Engine specific improvements, uProject is our new project system for Unreal Engine projects. This is very, very helpful compared to the traditional solution, open solution. With uProject, Unreal Engine developers will have a faster and more accurate IntelliSense because Visual Studio now has a lot more additional contexts compared to the solution. And as I mentioned before, Visual Studio integration tool is you can now install it directly in Visual Studio. We actually have removed it from the Fab Marketplace because we don't need the Marketplace anymore. And it is also not needed for blueprint references, something that a lot of customers have told us that it is valuable to them. So we have then moved that feature from the plugin onto Visual Studio natively. But if you want extra blueprint debugging information, Visual Studio integration tool is required. And as I've shown you, you can see your blueprints in your call stack window, as well as all your blueprint information in locals. I have also showed you a variety of Copilot improvements, specifically in the debug and diagnose step of your workflow. So breakpoint suggestions, variable analysis, and of course, parallel stacks. Very powerful tool that got even better thanks to Copilot. And of course, the biggest thing this year to our team is dynamic debugging. You no longer have to see variables optimized away and use a Pragma optimized workflow. We have been working very closely with our game developers, and this is now available in Visual Studio 17, 14, and later. We have a very detailed blog showing you how to activate C++ dynamic debugging. Now, as I mentioned before, we're working with a lot of internal partners to make sure the feature fits the need, right? So from the coalition to game developers at Halo Studio to developers at Rare, which Keith is actually here in the audience with us today. So Keith will be a great resource to know how dynamic debugging works on a practical level, because he has been using it since January. Just some additional tidbits. Dynamic debugging is x64 only. It works with Xbox, FastBuild, Incredibuild, and Unreal Engine 5.6. It still works with Unreal Engine 5.5 and earlier, and you only need to cherry pick a few changes. And it's not supported for LTCG, PGO, opt-ICF, and incremental linking. We have a deep dive on Thursday where our engineering lead for dynamic debugging will go through a technical deep dive into how the team had come up with dynamic debugging. All right. In the last part, I'm going to hand it back over to Augustin.
All right, so I showed you some of the source control features that are available in Visual Studio. Some of them have been available for a long time, but we've continued to add to them over the years. So if you want to have a graphical user interface for managing your source control needs, there are lots of features available as part of Visual Studio. And some of the newer changes over the past year, there are some improvements to managing renamed files, PR drafts, and templates. We have support for internal GitHub repos as well as multi-repo support. Then I also showed you the writing and customizing Git commit messages and being able to set a template for them as well, so that it's always following the template, and it's also giving you a tailored list of exactly what changed in your particular commit by looking at the differences in the files. There have also been some improvements to the feature for adding PR comments, so you can add PR comments yourself. But then we also have a code review feature where you can have Copilot code review your code at the commit line and generate some additional comments in case you happen to have missed anything. And again, that's something you can just kind of run in the background while you're doing other stuff. There's also a filter for viewing outgoing and incoming commits. There's a new button in that Git Changes window. And then new to this version of Visual Studio in 2026. So a feature I didn't get to show you, if you go to Copilot chat, you can type hashtag Git changes, and that basically gives it some context to look specifically at what's changed in your files in terms of Git. This can be really useful for summarizing changes that haven't been committed yet or explaining specific commits, and it can help basically figure out, okay, what actually changed from A to B. So you can basically reference specific commits and changes from the Git Changes window in Copilot chat. And we've continued developing the code review changes with the code review experience with Copilot. So this was added in the past year, but we've made some improvements to it as well in 18.0. So it should be a bit more accurate and more useful than before. And lastly, we have inline comments in the PR diff view. All right, now I want to remind everyone, so the mission of the C++ product team at Microsoft is to empower every C++ developer and their teams to achieve more. And we do this through the various developer tools that we've been shipping for a long time. We are one of the oldest teams at Microsoft. And we've been continuing to develop our tools over the years to try to help make you as productive as possible in your C++ development. And we would love to hear your feedback on our tools as we continue to iterate on them and make them better for you. And then finally, so just a reminder, we have some other Microsoft talks at CppCon. Some of these are in the past, but you can catch them on YouTube. And there was a VS Code talk this morning. And there are a number of other talks later in this week as well. I also want to remind everyone to please take our survey. There's a QR code there in the corner where you can go to the aka.ms link. Your feedback is really valuable to us and helps us decide what to prioritize for future updates to Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or MSVC or VC Package or anything else that we're working on for you. And if you do enter the survey, we have Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code socks while supplies last. If you take the survey and stop by our booth, you get socks. And you also get entered into a daily raffle for today, tomorrow, and Thursday to win a Lego prize. And with that, we are happy to open the floor to any questions. We don't have a lot of time left, but we're happy to also talk to you at the Microsoft booth afterwards.
I have one question, just in relation to VC package versus NuGet. Does it both package managers are in there. Is there any preference? Is one taking priority over the other, or what's the?
I would recommend using VC package for C++ dependencies and NuGet for .NET ones, or for anything that isn't a library, maybe some other type of binary file that you need to get. And also, NuGet is more applicable to MS Build projects usually, and I know you can use it outside of MS Build, but that's usually where you get the best experience. But in general, for C++ dependencies, we'd recommend VC package. It's much better designed to handle C++ problems than NuGet, which is more for .NET. So we are out of time, but we'll just be at the booth around the corner if anyone has more questions.
Yeah, please follow us to the booth for additional questions. And thank you all for attending.